You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% Podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome, everybody, to the 16th episode of the 1% Podcast, the show where we dig deep with cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers in order to give you that 1% you need to keep pushing forward. Today on the show, we have Eric. Eric is an actor who lives in LA right now, and he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma when he was 36 years old. Eric's been in several movies you may have seen on Lifetime. He's been in the Pumkin Pie Wars on Hallmark. He was on a show, I Live with Models, that was in the UK on Comedy Central, and also a movie called The Perfect Wedding as well. Eric.
Doing great, Truett. Thank you, man.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you on the show. So everyone, how I came across Eric's contact was I was scrolling through Instagram, and there was some cancer stories that were popping out for me, and I came across Eric's story, and the more I read into it, I was like, wow, this guy's had a complete life change. And I didn't know anything about you prior to going through like your profile and stuff. But the more I read about the things that you were experiencing and just how your symptoms kind of came up and how you were dealing with it, I think was what was most impressive to me. So I was like, man, I got to get in touch with this guy. And so I reached out and we talked a couple of weeks ago. We had a great conversation and started talking about all sorts of things. And I was like, man, I definitely got to get this guy on the podcast. And so here we are today. So Eric, man, I'm excited to talk to you. I think your story is going to make a dramatic impact on a lot of people, and just your perspective on Hodgkin's lymphoma and the things that you've done individually, I think are very unique, and it's going to be a great opportunity for people to really be able to pull a lot out of this story and take what works for them and go on about their business. So the first question I have for you is, why do you feel like it's important for you to be able to share your story with all of our listeners today?
Well, I didn't realize how popular cancer was. I mean, I'd seen all of the fundraising techniques that people would go through, and my mother had cancer, and you would hear, oh, this person has cancer, but I always considered myself really healthy. So I never thought it would be possible for me to really get it. And then once I did, I started researching and I realized, wow, the statistics are really bad and anybody can have cancer in their lifetime. And so I figured I might as well just start sharing my information and teach people what I did that did work and didn't work. See if I can help them in some way.
Yeah, man. What is one specific takeaway you want people to be able to pull out of your story specifically once they listen to the show today?
I guess the viral issue. It seems like viruses tend to be the cause of a lot of these cancers. And I think that, let's say your nutrition, your diet, your digestion system, a lot of that stuff contributes to the viruses growing in your body. And I think it's kind of ignored in our society with the way we eat, the way we treat our environment. It's just getting worse and worse with these cancer rates. So I figure if I could learn on how to take control or at least keep the viral issue down, then I'll prevent it from coming back. And if I can share the information with other people, then maybe they won't get cancer altogether. But the information's there. It's just not, I guess, researched. It's just not out there in the public to talk about. So people don't know. It's kind of bizarre to me. Now that I know, it's bizarre to me.
Yeah, I love the way you're taking initiative on that. That was one thing I really took from our first conversation. You had a lot of knowledge about a lot of different products and supplements and then methods and techniques to really, navigate your body and adjust your body to help, fight it from the inside. And I think that's neither one of us are doctors, obviously, but, your story, maybe people can pull a little bit from your story as they listen to it today. And if something works, that's great. And if they have an opportunity to research things a little more before they make a decision on, following any kind of advice, definitely to take a look at that and see what other options are for them out there as they go through their journey. So tell us a little bit about it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's essential that people take this into their own hands. I mean, my experience with the doctors were probably like most people. They just trust them and they want to do whatever they say because they have the education. But a lot of the information I was researching was kind of going against what they were saying. So I was able to at least have a conversation with my doctors and have a different point of view or bring in my own perspective of what I'd like to do. Just because in general, there's different forms of treating cancer, and it's all different perspectives throughout the world. So I just don't trust that one point of view is going to be the best solution. I think it's better to be informed and have something that you think works for you. It's like doing one of those diets, an Atkins diet might not work for you. The keto diet might not work for you, but you got to find out what it is. And it just takes a lot of desire and being in a situation like cancer, you really don't have much of an option, I think, unless you just want to play the odds. And I was just trying to increase the odds to be in my favor. So I feel like everybody should kind of do that.
I love it. I mean, I love the way you took initiative on everything. So tell us a little bit about your life prior to your diagnosis.
So I feel like my career was really starting to take shape. I started off as a commercial actor in Miami, and I was doing little projects here and there. But once I moved to LA, I came out with my wife, and right off the bat, I hit that sitcom for Comedy Central. And I thought, okay, this is the next step. And then shortly after that, I booked a lead on a Hallmark movie, and that was the next step. My stress level was pretty moderate. Financially and career-wise, things were just, a normal weight of the world, I guess. I was very healthy. I exercised every day. I didn't get much sun, which I understand now that cancer patients tend to have low levels of vitamin D. I was just trying to keep my skin away from the sun damage. But what else? I was eating very, very good. In my opinion, it was healthy. I mean, I had a well-balanced diet. It wasn't like I was specific. I wasn't vegan. I wasn't ketogenic or anything specific. I was just having a little bit of everything and trying to keep the joy in my food. My relationships were great with my wife and friends. I did suffer from mild depression, I guess. It's not diagnosed, but I could just tell that I would easily drop into a depressive state. What else? And everything seemed to be going well for my life. Cancer was definitely the last thing that I'd expect to happen. And in a way, I'm very grateful for it to happen, but I just didn't think it would hit me like that.
Yeah. Share with us the moments leading up to the day you were diagnosed. What kind of signs and symptoms were you having?
Looking back, I realize now that there was a lot of symptoms that I should have paid attention to, because I believe that cancer's I know mine was a slow growing cancer, and I can't tell you how far back it started, but let's say 5 years. And the reason why I know that is I was able to look at photos and see the swelling in my left neck. And I always thought it was just an unproportionate size of my muscles. But right in that same section is where the tumor started to grow, and it popped out of my neck overnight, actually on my birthday of last year. So I thought it was just, wow, I got this. I was doing a film, and I accidentally swallowed this concoction that was supposed to be a fake vomit. And so I thought, it's just an infection. I just give it some time. Like every other cold I've ever had, it just comes and goes. But 2 months went by, and the swelling never went down. So I went ahead and I got checked, and we went through the biopsy process. But I also realized that there were other signs. Like I was extremely tired throughout the day for about 2 years, and I thought, man, this aging thing is really hitting me hard. Or maybe it's just the stress of the work. It's just LA, the constantly going. But the fatigue was getting to me. I'd wake up and I'd start yawning, and I was just tired throughout the day. I'd take naps. I also had eczema, and never had eczema throughout my childhood. But as an adult, the past about 2 years as well, I started getting the itchy knees, the itchy elbows. And I thought, man, there's something wrong with the food. There's something wrong with the diet that I'm doing. I don't know what's going on, but this isn't my body. Something's off. And I also had digestive issues growing up. So for, what I understand is that, if your liver's not working right and your digestion system's not working right, let's say your gut in general is supposed to be like the majority of your immune system. That'll affect your immune system. And so I think that just made me susceptible. And once, in my opinion, the viral issue came over, then my immune system couldn't take control of it. And cancer is destined to happen. I also understand that, humans, we tend to get cancer about 6 times in our lifetime. But when our immune system is strong enough, it can kind of take it over. So we don't even recognize it, we don't notice it. But there are those moments where I guess your immune system's low enough and it can just start to grow.
Yeah, man, I didn't even know that we get cancer that many times in our lifetime, but our immune system takes over that. That's interesting to know. Mm-hmm. So leading up to your diagnosis, you mentioned all the signs and stuff that you were having. Like you thought it was one thing, but then now that you look back on it, it was something completely different. Tell us about the day that you got diagnosed. Like where were you at? What were you doing? And how were you told?
I had an idea, like maybe this is cancer. I had gone to my first general physician, and she freaked out and sent me directly to an ENT. And the ENT thought, you know what, small chance of anything serious. Let me give you some antibiotics. 2 weeks went by, and then nothing worked. So then he did the FNA, a fine needle aspirator, and it's kind of a small biopsy. And when that came back as positive, he called me the day before Thanksgiving. I was at a museum, at an art gallery, with some friends of mine. And I remember it was late. It was around 8:00 at night. And I thought, well, you know what? If the call was supposed to come in today, he hasn't called, so I guess I'm in the clear. I mean, he called me for bad news. But then sure enough, he did. And it was just as we were leaving. And I remember him calling as if it was nonchalant, like as if, you got nothing. But he didn't seem that way. But then he says, hey, listen, I just want to let you know, I know it's Thanksgiving. I just want to give you this information before you spend your Thanksgiving day with your family and friends. But I did get the biopsy back, and it came back as Hodgkin's disease. And I said, whoa, what's that? He says, it's Hodgkin's lymphoma. And as of right now, we don't know the stage, but that's cancer. And I want you to enjoy the dinner, enjoy your Thanksgiving, and once the holiday's over, we'll come back together and we'll schedule a surgery. I was like, whoa. And I didn't know what to say, so I just kind of took it like, okay. And I was trying to be strong. I remember trying to be strong, and I just kind of speechless. So I was just going with what his flow was. All right, fine. And we'll talk when we get back from the holidays. And I remember my friends walked outside, and I was just sitting on this bench by myself, very angry, and I felt very just let down. Like I had tried my entire life to be healthy, and things were moving forward, and it just felt like everything that had been building up to this moment was just kind of taken out from under me, and just giving me another challenge in life, another one that I just didn't need. So I remember calling my wife later. It was that night, and she was out with a friend of hers who was visiting, and I could barely speak. And since it was Thanksgiving, she was just destroyed. She was out in an outdoor shopping mall, and they had all these festive lights, and the families were all celebrating, and it was just bizarre. A very, very uncomfortable experience. But I just remember being so angry and let down. Like why was this happening? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I remember going through chemo and stuff during Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it was, you can't even enjoy that. I can't imagine getting the news that you got, and how when the doctor says go ahead and enjoy the holidays. I mean, how can you actually do that when you got such terrible news?
I know. It's like, man, thank you. It's so sweet of you, especially to make it seem like nothing. But it's just one of those things that I guess doctors, they treat these things so much, they deal with these so much that their sensibility towards people is not they're just not as sensitive about it, And he's a great surgeon. He did a great job. I have a scar on my neck that's really small, and I definitely trusted him. But that's just how he is. I remember going to meet him the first time, and it was the same thing. It's like, nothing's a big deal. Nothing's a big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was your biggest fears once you got that news? I mean, obviously you talked to your wife about it and your family, and you guys probably threw some things back and forth. What were your biggest fears that you had, or what kind of feelings did you have going on when you actually had time to sit down and think about what you just heard?
Oh man, I remember we had Thanksgiving with some friends of ours the following day, and we went to this cliffside area on the Pacific coast, and they had this motorhome. So we went and joined them for Thanksgiving. My family lives back east, and I'm in California. And I thought, damn, that's it. All right, I'm changing my diet. And we had a vegetarian dinner just because I figured it's me to start cleaning it out. And I couldn't sleep that night. Not so much that I'm not really afraid of my own death, but I do worry about my family and just leaving this life and not being able to experience it anymore. So I woke up that following day around 5:30 in the morning or something like that. Didn't really sleep well, and I went out to the cliff, and I just sat there looking at the sun rising and the ocean and the birds that were happening, and just thinking, wow, this is life, and I'm gonna miss it. And my wife and I had just gotten married. It hadn't even been, at that time it was about 8 months. So we had just gotten married, and I felt bad for her because I think the world of her. And I was like, man, if I leave this place and she's stuck alone, like how long is that going to affect her? How's that going to affect her personality? She's always happy and smiling. I was like, I don't want that to happen. And I was a victim for about 3 days, just thinking, damn, this is going to get me. This is going to get me. It's going to take me away. We had watched so many movies, in the past, and certain movies would pop out to me, like I forget, the Walk on the Moon or the Man on the Moon with Jim Carrey. And we had just seen it randomly, like a few months before. And I remember, I forget the actor that he's portraying, but he had gotten cancer, and he tried to cure himself naturally, and he died, and it didn't work out for him. And it hit us both hard. We were like, oh my God, why is this hitting us so hard? We don't know. And it was just so coincidental. But my wife and I, for about 3 days, we were just kind of in it. And then finally, we both said, you know what, that's it. Let's just take initiative, and we're going to beat this thing. There's nothing, it's a good cancer to have, which is such a weird thing to say, but it's a good cancer to have. And we'll find a way to treat this all naturally, because I really didn't hear anything good about chemo or radiation or surgery. So I was like, I don't really want to go that route if I don't have to. And so we decided to try and treat this naturally. And so our first attempt was actually to go to San Diego, because there was a fasting clinic that was there. And I thought, let me start with that. And that took place over Christmas. So it was like another holiday just thrown out the window. Bad timing of things, but
yeah. I think the movie you were describing was about Andy Kaufman's life.
That's it. Yeah. Thank you. And I think he had Hodgkin's disease too, but maybe it was non-Hodgkin's. I can't remember. Yeah.
So just to back up to that point for 1 second, obviously in your line of work, you probably watch a lot of films, but do you find that it's hard if you're watching like a television show, or if you're watching a film that has an actor who has cancer, or someone like in the show has cancer? Do you find that kind of like resonates with you a different way than it would prior to your diagnosis?
Yeah, good question, because it does actually. I'd see it, and I didn't realize how much it is out there. It's everywhere. In a podcast like this one, or Instagram like I'm doing, YouTube videos, commercials, TV shows, movies. It's a big topic, and I didn't pay attention to it in the past, but now I hear it all the time, and I'm like, my gosh, it's never going to leave me. This is everywhere. And it's just almost like the light's being shined on now that I hear the word. And it wasn't like that when my mom had cancer. It was just, it was almost like, she's going to be fine. And she turned out to be fine. But now that I experienced it, I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm hearing it everywhere. And yeah.
Well, so you got the diagnosis, you started going through, you started looking at different avenues of treatment. Talk to us a little bit about the fasting. I know that was something that you you really took part in, and you lost an extreme amount of weight. Talk to us about the idea of fasting and what benefits that you read about, and I guess what made you choose that route, and then what kind of results you had from it.
Sure. My oncologist, I finally decided to go with this one oncologist because he's an integrative oncologist, and it just felt better than this other one that I had talked to. But he recommended fasting, and so we had watched this documentary called The Science of Fasting, and it's this new research, well, not new, but it's being studied a lot on how fasting can heal the body. It's from rheumatoid arthritis to obesity, diabetes. It can reverse these things, even cancers. So we thought if he's recommending it, then let's try this out and see how we can do this. The only issue was that I was getting treatments once every 2 weeks. So that means I would have to fast once every 2 weeks. And the way it works is in 3 days, I believe your body goes into ketosis, where it survives off the fat cells and it no longer needs glucose. And you can do that for up to 40 days, I believe. But for the cancer treatments, I would fast 3 days before my treatment, and then I wouldn't eat until the end of the following day or the day after. And it was a great experience. It was a great challenge to have. But what happens is, I believe the cells, they're designed just by evolution and how long we've been alive as humans from hunting, that we wouldn't eat so often. So as we go through these days without eating, we can still manage to survive and function. And so on the third day, for some reason, the cells flip, so to speak, and they're actually protected. They start to protect themselves. Cancer cells can't do that, and they survive on glucose, or the sugars. So when we would get the chemo, our healthy cells are protected. They don't need the food that's coming into the body or through the IV form or whatever. And the cancer cells take in all the chemo without damaging the healthy cells. So that means your hair follicles will be stronger than they would be otherwise. And I guess your immune system's healthier. However, I found that the problem was actually getting out of my fast. It was never the fasting. The first day was kind of rough. The second day is a little bit better. By the third day, you're not even hungry. And the fourth day, you're feeling very much at peace and relaxed without eating. But the following day, when I'm transitioning back into food, I didn't realize you're supposed to have light foods to go in first, like nothing but fruits or broths. But you don't want to put in anything that's going to block up the liver during this time, because when you're fasting, your liver is going to dump a lot of the stuff that's stuck inside that it holds on to throughout your life. And if you block it up right away, then it's just going to create more problems down your digestive tract, create more constipation. And I didn't know that. I had concerns about losing so much weight. So my oncologist had said, listen, when you're fasting and you break your fast, don't worry about it. Your body's going to gain the weight right back. So I recommend just eating a lot of good fats, like have a good steak, have some eggs, have some good butters, and you'll gain the weight back. But it immediately constipated me, and for days. And so I got frustrated with that, and I did my own research, and I came across somebody else who had recommended to do the fruits. And so I did that. I started having light fruits, and that would help tremendously. It didn't help with the weight loss. I'd still lost weight, and I went from 185 to 152 very rapidly. And it took me 2 months after treatment to actually get back to 180.
Wow. That's a huge, huge lifestyle change. You said that once you transition back into eating normal foods, I mean, I can only imagine, like, after coming off, solid food and then slowly transitioning back in, like this, that's a huge change in your body. What kind of, I guess, positive effects did you find that fasting produced for you?
Many. I think fasting now is worth it. I'm planning on fasting again just after the New Year's. So the first days, like anybody else, they get that hangry stage where they're just they're moody and they really want to eat. The second day is kind of the same. By the third day, I started feeling very calm, and I would meditate a lot, especially during this process. I was meditating and meditating and meditating. But I started feeling a big sense of peace and relaxation from within. I had more clarity than I expected. I wasn't tired as I thought I would be. By the third day, I actually had just enough energy as I did before I started fasting. And by the fourth day, I believe your testosterone levels really drop down low. I think that's part of the reason why you're non-confrontational. And I don't know if that I was wiser during those days, but people were really listening intently to what I was saying. And it might have been because I was losing weight and they just thought like, this guy's dying, that type of thing. But I think that's what it was. But really, it was just a weird thing. Like somebody would be talking to my wife about an issue, and I would just hear it, and I would have a response, and my reply was always just coming from a greater place. Like life's more important. There's certain things that you don't need to worry about, and I just found people listening more, and I think that had to do with kind of tapping in. You're not coming from an egotistical point of view, trying to prove a point, not trying to tell them what to do. It's just kind of a very, open-minded perspective. So I enjoyed fasting.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that fast, for different reasons. A lot of the churches that I'm involved in or have been involved in the past, like they do a certain fast in the beginning of the year, and the sacrifice of fasting, obviously has physical benefits and physical struggles as far as like not eating and things of that nature stuff, but the mental side of everything and just the clarity and all that comes from the sacrifice, of resisting a natural temptation to eat, to, your body wants to eat and wants to stay alive, but resisting that and really tapping into this like profound mental state and profound like moments of, or just, days of clarity, I think is super helpful. And, obviously consult your physician before you ever try anything like this in the future. But it's one of those things where I think it's really important for you to be able to do that in a way, to take yourself to a mental state where you can really focus, especially if you're fighting a battle like you were doing then. Like it really gives you some clarity as you approach that, because again, the doctors that we speak to most of the time, they focus primarily on our physical aspects, but this definitely, it works on the physical and mental side as well too. So I think it's really interesting because you hear, obviously you hear all sorts of fad stuff about this is what gets rid of cancer and all these other things and stuff, but everybody's got a different recipe. And if this is what's working for you, and if you've gotten so much out of it, then I think that's amazing. And I appreciate you sharing that with everybody.
Yeah. I don't know if it was, I think it's being found that it's very beneficial for people with breast cancer and some other forms of cancer. I don't remember the others, but I decided to give it a shot just because I didn't want the side effects. As it was, I didn't want to go the chemo route, and I caved in for my family. They were just very scared for me. And so once I did, I said, let me find a way to make this whole side effect issue be as small as possible. I just don't want to have them. And that's when I decided to I'll give it a shot. Let me see what happens. And yeah, I think it's great. It's a mental exercise, 100%. It's purely mental. And going through it, I started finding a lot of my attachments to my body, like feeling like, oh my God, I got to eat. Like, well, my body has to eat. And I was able to separate myself from my body's desires. And a lot of people have those like sexual desires or drug addictions, or food addicts. It doesn't matter. It's just your body's needs, not your needs. So I was able to separate myself during this process, and I started finding that fascinating. Like, wow, I can actually do that. That's pretty cool. And also the foods, like the kind of foods that I was craving. I also didn't have. I took food for granted. I mean, I think most of us do, especially in America, where we want something, we'll go out and we'll get it. It's very quick, and we won't even chew our foods fully. We'll just kind of throw it in our mouth because we're in a hurry. And I remember the first time I started breaking my fast, I would have one tomato, and that tomato tasted so good. I was like, I don't want anything on this. I just want to eat this tomato or this piece of spinach. I want to taste the food solely by itself before I started mixing it together and adding salt and flavors. And my love for food started growing. I started cooking more and more. I remember during my fasting stages where I wasn't eating, that my wife was cooking for herself. And I would ask, can I just smell this? Can I just smell this food real quick? And my senses started getting heightened from my nose as well. And I could taste the food from my nose and just getting enough satisfaction from that. And man, it's a good experience.
Yeah.
Have you done it, by the way? You fasted, right?
Yeah, I've fasted before. It's it's hard to explain if you haven't done it before, what all the different levels that you go through, and the different, from the moods to the, I hate everybody for the first 24 hours, being hungry, and then to being so hungry you're not hungry, and then kind of going from there. And then once you get to a certain point, you're like, I'm going to be okay. It's a mental game. And then it just makes you so sharp, I feel like. And, obviously physically your body's doing a lot of different things, but it's almost like a cleanse in a way. Like it cleanses your body and it really sharpens your mind to be able to make some great decisions. And again, like a lot of people that I know would do it for like religious and spiritual reasons, because they got something that, like prayer and fasting is a part of, a lot of things. And, if you're really focused on something, what better way to stay focused than to sacrifice food and to really get your mind clear if you're really, intent about, making some changes and doing different things. So I love it. I think I can't do it all the time, but I think it's something it's definitely, if you've never tried it, again, consult your physician before you do something like this, but give it a try. If you're healthy, like give it a try and see what happens and see what it does for you. Just give it 4 or 5 good days. Just don't do it for a day or so, and then see what happens. And I'd love to hear any kind of feedback you have on fasting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So what other treatments did you use besides fasting? You decided to get chemo. Is that correct?
Yes, I did chemo. Originally, this first doctor I met with was recommended by my aunt. She was like, "Oh, this guy treats celebrities. You're in good hands." But he recommended radiation. And I had heard that there's a lot of cancers that come back as a secondary cancer through radiation. I believe it's because it destroys your immune system even more so, and it just almost guarantees a relapse. So I found this other doctor who had told me, listen, I'm only going to do 12 rounds of chemo. We'll test it after the 4th one and we'll give you a test and see how you're looking. But this alone has been done since the 70s, and it's almost like since we're catching kind of early, I was stage 2. So since we're catching kind of early, you got about a 95% success rate within 5 years. And so I went that route, and it was ABVD was my medication. And he said that you're guaranteed to lose your hair loss. So you're going to lose all your hair. And I was like, I can't lose my hair, doc. If I lose my hair, I'm really not going to work much. And he's like, well, do the fasting thing. Let's see how that works out. And after that, I realized, well, I got to find another way to transition out of my fasting. And I met with this, I'd been reading this book by Anthony Williams, which is called The Medical Medium. And he was the one that kept explaining about viral issues and cancer. And so I reached out to this lady who kind of practiced his method of healing through nutrition and supplementation. And she had recommended a whole box. It literally had like 22 supplements at one point that I was just taking throughout my day, and or several times a day. And most of it was focused towards attacking viral issues, bacterial issues, digestive issues, things that just kind of help my body. And so I would take cat's claw. That's great for antiviral. There's reishi mushroom, chaga mushroom powders. Lots of teas, different kinds of teas, burdock root teas, all these blood cleansers. I was drinking wheatgrass juice on a daily basis. And I went on a vegan protocol, and as much as I could, because the theory was that as long as I'm helping my liver to cleanse itself, then my blood will be cleaner and my immune system will be cleaner. My digestion system will be working better. So it was like I'd even eat raw food during the day up until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I'd have cooked foods at night. And obviously I cut out a lot of sugars. The only sugars I would get were from fruits and sweet potatoes, things like that, carbohydrates. Didn't really eat too many grains for a long time, and I felt great. My energy level started getting better. Originally, I was exhausted. I could just go for walks. That's all I would do. I'd go like a mile-long walk, and I'd come back and I was beat. And but once I started incorporating the supplements and this new nutrition, I started having more energy, even though I was getting the chemo. And meditation was a huge part of it. There's a guy named Sadhguru that I had discovered on YouTube. And so I started learning meditation through him. And so it kind of calmed my mind down while my body was going through this process. And it allowed me to be able to detach myself again from my body, connect with a higher source within myself, feeling at peace. And I journaled every day. I feel like those things are essential. Like, you have to have this full, well-rounded approach to healing. Cancer is obviously something that comes from within you. It's not like you get it like like someone coughs and you get the flu, not like that. It's something that happens within inside you. So if you can find a way to heal yourself inside, your mind, body, and spirit, I think it's a good key to healing. I think prayer, I prayed a lot. And it wasn't like I was praying for anything specific, like, please God heal me. I would just say, thank you. Thank you for this day. Thank you for letting me wake up and having this vision to be able to see things. Thanks for my legs that are able to walk around. But I was also in that, we're in that position where you have to be grateful for the simple things, realize it can be taken away from you. And at those days, I remember feeling like the simple things really mattered. Like, just spending time with my wife was important. Being able to talk to my mother on the phone and being able to taste tomato, like I was saying, like the simple things is something that I started really to appreciate. But the only way I was able to do that was I wasn't a victim. I took initiative, and I started taking care of myself, mind, body, and spirit. And that really, it helped me a lot.
Eric, man, I love hearing you say that. I love how you took that personal inventory and knew what you needed to do, and just the humbleness of what you were just saying. Like, thank you, God, for just letting me be alive today. Not, you were dealing with cancer and you have all these things that's going on, but you were just happy to be alive and happy to spend moments with your wife and have those conversations with your parents. And just the taste of food was completely different because you were present in the moment and able to enjoy all those things, which I think, life is full of distractions. I love social media. I love the internet, and, I love being busy and all those things, but we get pulled in so many different directions, and there's so many distractions out there that really just eat up our time, that sometimes we allow the distractions to outweigh the things that are most important in life. And not that you have to get cancer to realize what's important in life, but through this moment, you decided that you weren't going to be a victim. This wasn't something that you were going to be mad about. You were just going to be grateful. And gratitude is contagious. And I can only imagine like the people around you, how they saw you going through this, and they saw that how, gracious you were, that, you were just happy to be alive and happy to have an opportunity to fight this. Not that you were bitter about having to go through all these things, but just the way you lived your life, which I think is a huge testament to, you as a person, and what a great example that you have, that you have been for so many people, especially in your line of work, where, you encounter so many different types of people, and everyone's always trying to hustle and do the next thing. Like, you got a chance to really stop and evaluate who you were and what you did and the way you lived your life. And I can only imagine how much, that will add into what you do for a living, and be able to draw on those emotions and circumstances as you perform in different films and stuff. And I think that was something that, could definitely obviously add to your career out there.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I think in hindsight, cancer really kind of helped me and saved my life in a way. I've heard that before too, like cancer saved my life. I remember trying to be real creative and clever and like, how can I make these posts that can get people's attention? And on Instagram so they can read this article or whatever. And it kind of did, because Hollywood is a tough business, and it eats at you, and it can make you bitter. And it was making me bitter. When you want something so bad, you're putting in all this work, but you're not getting that. You're getting the breadcrumbs over here. You're like, what the heck? I don't get this. Why am I putting so much effort into this and just getting this little bits and pieces? So I wasn't grateful for those little bits and pieces. And my wife would always kind of call me on it. You know, she's like, you just got to be happy. You got to be grateful. And she's like, one of these days, you never know. Like, you see these people in the streets and they're homeless, or this one's in a wheelchair, and thank God you're not in that situation. I was like, but why do I have to be grateful for that? I mean, I'm blessed. Look at me. I'm walking. I'm in good shape. It doesn't make any sense. And if I do, maybe I do need a lesson like this. Maybe I do need something to kind of shake me up, because they're grateful for the simple things and I'm not. And then when I got cancer, I was like, wow, I can't believe this. This is what it took for me to be grateful. And I wish I didn't need this situation, but it shook me up. It kind of reinvented me. And I started seeing the world differently. And that ego sense of like, what do I want? What do I need? Started fading away rapidly. And I started falling in love with myself in a way that I had never fallen in love with myself before. I started forgiving myself for a lot of the things I held on to, and allowing myself to be a human being with mistakes instead of being so tough on myself. And like, I never felt like I was good enough. And those things started falling off just real quick. And so I think cancer really helped. And even seeing like the sacrifices my family's made for me all these years, and dealing with the fact, I can't be at this event. I'm sorry. I have to go study my lines. I have work to do. I have to travel to this place to do this job. I can't be there for the birthday. And now I see everybody differently. I see all the sacrifices my wife's made, which is tremendous. I think if anybody's going through something difficult like this, finding support is crucial. Like, if you can have that, then you're in good hands. So I don't know. And I also forgot to mention, one of the supplements I was taking was cannabis. It was a very strong, concentrated amount of THC. And while it's still not used as a treatment, it's very heavily researched today in Israel and in Spain specifically. And they're showing now the success rates, and the concentrated amounts of THC tends to shrink tumors, and strong amounts of CBD, which is the non-psychoactive part of the plant, suppresses tumor growth. And they're proving now that specific strains, and I believe when they get certain molecules from that strain, it's worked for a specific type of cancer, like breast cancer or prostate cancer, but it might not work for one or the other. So I'm excited about the research that's out there, because one, if that's the case, it's a far milder form of treatment than having to do chemo or radiation. And it's very effective. My wife's uncle was diagnosed with bile duct cancer of his liver, and he's in Mexico, and he was fully inflamed. His eyes were popping out of his head, very yellow eyes, yellow skin. And the doctors at the time had said, listen, there's nothing we can do for you, and it's best if you just go home with your family and say your goodbyes and be with them in peace. And my wife heard about this. She said, absolutely not. She said, I'm going to find a doctor in Mexico. And she did. She found this cannabis doctor in Mexico who was able to get him this concentrated form of cannabis. And within 3 months, he's cancer-free. Obviously, he put him on a protocol for his diet and did some other things like soaking his body in baking soda and Epsom salt and doing other things to kind of detox gently. But within 3 months, he didn't have to have surgery or radiation or chemotherapy or any kind of therapy to help him, other than purely a plant-based product. So I think it's important, because I was taking that supplement the day of my treatment, the day after, and the day after that. It would be a Thursday, a Friday, a Saturday. And I did that because it would help me fall asleep, and it would help me with my appetite. And I figured it wouldn't hurt with the treatment, because it's going to go ahead and kill the tumor and prevent it from growing. So if anybody has the desire to study it or learn more, I definitely recommend it. And there's a lot of evidence showing how successful it is. It's worth the risk to me, especially if you have a stage 4 situation where, the doctor's saying you got no chance, I highly recommend researching that.
Yeah, there's definitely a different recipe for everybody. So explore your options and see what's out there, and do all your research. And I feel like you'll be guided towards the right thing. Don't just up and make a snap decision, but really do your research on what it is that you're looking to do, like Eric's saying, and really dive into different, like I said, Eastern or Western, whatever it's the chemo you're taking, or an alternative treatment. Really, listen to your body, and if you feel led to try something or whatever, just do all your research ahead of time, and make sure it's a good fit for you as you go forward. But I've heard a lot of people use different supplements, like you were mentioning, that really aided a lot in their recovery process. I know just the inflammation process, the CBD oil that's really popular now, that people use for a lot of recovery, even from sports injuries and lungs and things of that nature and stuff. Like, all those things really help people out a lot. So definitely check those things out that Eric was mentioning. And Eric, I appreciate you sharing everything so far. Like, just you're dropping so much knowledge on me just listening to you talk about different avenues that people can go down that are non-traditional. And you're giving people other options, which I think is really important just to have the knowledge out there. You don't have to go try everything Eric's saying, but definitely look into the stuff and see what fits for you. And then if that's your path that you want to go down, definitely go that direction. So Eric, as you've finished up you're finished with all your treatments as of now, is that correct? I'm
done. Yeah, I did 12 rounds.
12 rounds. Okay. So how has your life been since you've finished treatment? You already said your attitude and everything's very different. Physically now you've gained, a majority of your weight back. How is your approach to life a little bit different now? And then the second question is, what piece of advice do you have for someone listening that's going to give them the 1% they need to keep fighting?
I'll start with a piece of information. Definitely do the research and don't give up. It takes research. You have to really thoroughly go through things, comb through the internet, and you'll find information on both sides of every coin. So I think if there's something you should take is do your own research and educate yourself as much as possible. It takes the fear out of things too. So where I thought cancer was a death sentence, through my own research, I found out that it wasn't. It doesn't necessarily mean it. That's how I discovered you have cancer multiple times in your life. They even actually find that most people die with cancer in them, and they don't even die because of the cancer. They die from other things, like let's say they have a heart attack, and let's say a woman's in her 90s. If the family permits them to do an autopsy, the majority of people that are at that age, they already have cancer in their bodies and they didn't even know it. So it's not so much the cancer that's a scary thing to me. To me, it was all about the treatments. But the research helped to put that in perspective, and then further research, once I committed to the chemotherapy, helped me to help with the side effects tremendously. I still find myself battling my ego, so to speak, like, oh, but I want this and I'm not getting these things. And I'm able to catch myself today, whereas in the past I wasn't able to. So I can find myself going down that route and then stopping myself to say, wait a minute, be grateful for what you have and be at peace with this or what you have right now. Don't jump ahead. Don't get in your mind. Don't allow that to take you down this path that you don't need to go down. And I'm super grateful for the simple things. Again, the gratitude that I have with my wife it just keeps growing more and more and more. I mean, she sacrificed so much of herself while I wasn't able to work. She worked more. And on top of that, in the beginning, she was helping me and watching me, which I'm sure she thought I was dying because I was losing weight and I looked like an AIDS patient at some point, where I was just very, very skinny. So for her to deal with that, go to work, and to come home and try and help me out. We have 2 dogs, not that it's a big deal, but taking care of the dogs as well. And so my gratitude has grown. And now I'm just more gentle on myself, even physically. I remember even though I was in shape, I thought, oh man, what's the next role I have to do? Do I have to get bigger? And so I'd exercise even harder. And even though I was tired because of the chronic fatigue that I was going through, I'm able to stop and be like, no, you don't have to push yourself so hard right now. Maybe tomorrow you can work out harder. And Focusing a lot on my relationships with friends and family really seemed to help a lot. I'm super grateful that I have my friends and family around me, and I created a lot of them afterwards. It's just finding ways to give to them, to help them, to put myself second, let them go first and help them with whatever it is that they want to do to get me out of myself. That really seems to help when you're, either volunteering or doing things for other people. In general, I just feel like that's a good thing in life. I feel like going with the flow. Now I go with the flow more. I do believe I'm in good hands, whether it's God or consciousness, whatever people want to call it. But we have this illusion of control. And I realize that I don't control my heartbeat. I don't control my breath unless I really focus on my breath. But even then, even if I wanted to hold my breath and not breathe for 3 minutes, I wouldn't do it. My body would take over. It would have its own thing. I don't have control over anything. And I think maybe just where I put my attention on. And even then, sometimes you want to focus on what you're reading or what you're talking about, and you get sidetracked because your mind takes you somewhere else. So it's almost like a constant illusion. So I think today, learning about that lack of control and just kind of allowing life to happen and unfold for me while I'm still pursuing things, but that really seems to help a lot. I guess having that faith in a higher power really has shifted for me, from the past of thinking, no, I'm creating this, I'm doing this, I booked the job, I made the money, I can do this on my own, to wait a minute, I'm not in this by myself. And I think the more I was seeing that, the more I'm kind of living my life that way. Yeah,
absolutely. It's one of those things until you get things taken away from you and perspective changes, you don't realize like how much you're not in control of a lot of stuff. So, I feel like our story is being written for us, but we have our hand on the pen as well, so we get to, through free will, pick different avenues we want to go down and different, situations and different consequences and different actions and stuff like that. So we have a choice in the matter, but there's so many things that happen with us and to us that are completely out of our control. And, it's awesome to hear that you recognize that more now, because that takes, I feel like, as a man, I think lots of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make the right decisions and to be old school and take care of the family. You want to take care of your wife and you guys have a good family and stuff, but knowing that there's certain things that are going to happen that completely out of your control that, someone else has got control over, depending on what you believe, that you don't really have to worry about that as much. And, I think that frees you up to focus on the things that you can control and being intentional in your life with the things that you have, just the willpower to make change. And I love hearing you say all the things that you've mentioned today, man. It's awesome. You sound like you're an awesome guy, man. I'm really excited. I'm glad to have you on the show here. And I appreciate you sharing your story with everyone, because it's different. It's different than most podcasts that I've done so far. And, that's what I want people to really get a taste of is there's, like I say a lot, there's a different recipe for everybody. And if there's things from Eric's story that can take you into a different level and to really shine some light and to get you some exposure and some knowledge on certain situations, please take from this story today, because, Eric takes a lot of courage to come out and share your story and, to share the emotional side of what you went through and how it's changed your life. And it takes a lot to recognize that as a person. So Eric, man, I really appreciate you, digging deep and going into that stuff and being able to share that with everybody today.
Yeah, well, thank you. Because, it does take some courage to put yourself out there. And I found myself hiding at some point because of social media, like, oh, what picture do I want to post? What do I want to say? And through this, I realized, no, you know what? There's something bigger than me, and I got to do this. And I'm sure that's what you feel compelled to do as well with the show. And I think it's foolish to not share this information. So whenever I talk to somebody in the street, if the conversation pops up, I feel like I need to talk about it and help people. It doesn't matter. I remember we've helped 3 people already with cancer, and it seems to keep coming. A lot of them have two of the 3 had breast cancer. And so we're just sharing the information with them as much as possible. And it's very rewarding to go through something, to overcome it, and then to be able to show them that, look, you can do this. It gives them a lot of inspiration, a lot of hope. and to guide them through the research, like research this, look this up. Here's an article I read. And I wouldn't be able to do that in the past. And I find that there's nothing more rewarding than being able to help a human being through their struggles than, as opposed to here's some money or whatever. No, if you can find a way to guide them and help them through their struggles, you're doing a far more rewarding thing. And I don't want to, I hate the idea of talking stuff like this, because then I feel like, I'm tooting my own horn. It's a good human being. No, it's not about that. It's just, if you go through and you experience this joy of helping somebody, then you know what I'm talking about. I consider myself humble through guilt. There's a lot of guilt that I carry with me in life, and so it keeps me humble. I think something like this, what you're doing, being able to create a show like this, it's essential. I wish there was things like this on TV where people could kind of tune in every once a week or whatever it is, to just get educated on this, because it's just a lack of education. I mean, the fact that today we have diabetes is skyrocketing, heart attack, disease, cancers, and all that stuff. But yet we're aware we have like a small amount of information that, our nutrition is kind of creating these issues where we have high fructose corn syrup, or what is high fructose corn syrup? Like, why are we having that in our foods? Why are we adding these natural flavors in our food? I don't want a natural flavor. I want the real flavor. And once you start researching those things, like what is a natural flavor? What's it doing to the body? What's MSG? What's that doing to the body? GMOs? What's that doing to the body? You start to realize that, damn, if I don't take control of these, of the information that I'm getting and just filter it so I can get the right information, I'm just going to be a victim to, let's say, profits or the environment that the world's kind of creating. So I don't know. I got to share the information. I feel the same way you do. I think that it's just there's something more than how much money you're going to make in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Eric, I like to end each show with 5 quick personal facts about you. I know, again, with your profession, you're out there and you've done a lot of different things, which is pretty awesome. But tell everybody, give us 2 things that motivate you each day.
Opening my eyes every day. I open them. I'm like, wow, here's another day. It's pretty stupid, but I like to keep it simple now. So that's one that motivates me. The other thing is this little poem that I read by Larry S. Chengiz, I think it's his name. And it just talks about you being an important person, and to remember that, and to see those things. So those 2 things today, I believe, are kind of like an inspiration for me. It keeps me going in the morning.
Recommend 3 supplements or products for our listeners.
Probably zinc. I understand there's a deficiency in zinc in our foods, and nutrients are essential during this process. Your body's healing, whether you believe in a certain diet or not. Your body needs certain types of fuel to heal. I know beta-glucan is good for cancer. What else? And I would just focus on anything that actually targets the viral issue, because that should bring down the cancer cells in general. But vitamin C, it's a simple supplement that everybody talks about, and it's been known for years. And if people have an issue with the acidity in vitamin C's, they can start taking ester C. Ester C is it's low in acidity, and it's less damaging, or not damaging, but it doesn't cause as much problem with your digestion if you find that you're having loose stools. But increase your vitamin C dosages. You can do IV therapy vitamin C, which is it's fantastic. Ester C is good for the acidity issue. And if not, there's liposomal C, which is it's an encapsulated form of vitamin C, and it allows you to absorb more amounts.
So what's the last book you've read?
Probably one of these Anthony Williams books. I was reading one on it's called The Medical Medium, and it's just about a general, like how to cure all of these chronic illnesses. And it's not so much a narrative book or anything like that to read. It's just more about researching. And I remember during treatment, I read a book called Radical Remission, which is by Kelly A. Turner. She was a cancer oncologist, an oncology therapist. And I found that one fascinating because she talks about there's like these 9 pillars that she created, that all these people who were sent home to die, which ones lived and why did they live? And she found these 9 factors on what it was that helped them. So I just assumed that, well, if it's helping them, then I'll just incorporate those things into my life. And it's got to help me in addition to the treatment I'm doing. So Radical Remission was a good book. I recommend that to people.
What's your favorite food or recipe that you got for our listeners?
Bananas are good for the digestive tract. I love bananas. Smoothies, drink a lot of smoothies. Foods. I mean, I love sushi, even though I'm trying not to eat it. And sometimes some good vegan food. I really like good vegetables, and how it takes a really good chef to make something like that really yummy. So if I find a good vegan restaurant, I'll throw myself in.
And what are 3 items that you have on your bucket or life list that you want to accomplish going forward?
I'd love to have kids. I'm still not having kids. Own my own home. I'd love to own my home. Just something simple that I want to have, where I can take care of my yard and kind of build and create and grow from there. And then my career, just to be able to get to a place in my career where if I did happen to get more attention, where I can redirect that attention to other things, something like this, like a cancer awareness, or I'm really big on caring about the environment. And I think that we need to do more so of that. So if my career can get to that level, I would love to redirect people that way. So a home, kids, and a good career. Just a simple American dream, right?
Right. Well, Eric, man, you've been a great guest today. Your story, the testimony of your life, your attitude. I think your attitude is what sticks out the most to me. How humble you are, how appreciative you are, how much gratitude that you have. And I think for all of our listeners, that's something that you can definitely pull away from today's episode as we end the show. But Eric, we'll definitely stay in touch with you. And one question, like, is your Pumkin Pie Wars going to come on this month on Hallmark, or what? They replay that movie every year, or what's going on?
Yeah, probably should. It should be on there now. I just got an Instagram message from Hallmark Movies or something like that. But yeah, they're playing it all year round. It's a good movie. It's a nice romantic comedy, and it's one of those feel-good movies. So there's nothing. It's a good one to watch during cancer, I guess. If you're going through your treatments, it's just a simple, predictable, and good movie. Nice and easy.
I'll tell my wife to be on the lookout for it. Her and her family love to watch every Hallmark and Lifetime movie out there. So,
nice.
But perfect, man. Well, Eric, again, I appreciate it today, and I'll be in touch soon, man. I really appreciate everything that you share with everybody today. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Yeah, Truett. Thank you, man. Thanks for doing what you do.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to 1%podcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.